Who's on first?
Wrong movie.
Are you sure? Aren't these the Who's on First guys?
They are, but still, wrong movie.
But that is their best bit, right?
Oh, one of the best. I think this is their best bit right here, this movie.
I don't think it's their best bit.
I think it is.
See, that's the thing, because these guys made, like, a billion movies, but they also had, like, decades in, like, vaudeville, and I think they did a bunch of shorts, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, what is their best bit? Because Chaplin, you could probably say, like, Great Dictator's probably his best performance, but, like, I would say Gold Rush is his best movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's personally me.
Yeah.
And, like, Buster Keaton, like, the General, like, that's pretty obvious.
Then you have Laurel and Hardy, where all their movies are hilarious.
Well, they did, like, shorts for a long time.
Yeah.
Aren't most of their movies only, like, 30 minutes? Like, they basically did, like, TV before TV.
Somewhere in there. It's been a long time since I've watched a full, like, Laurel and Hardy movie. But they are on the shorter scale of the spectrum of, like, full feature film and short film, silent film.
Yeah, I mean, like, top tier, old school, golden age Hollywood comedians, that's Marx Brothers, right?
Ooh, I do love me some Marx Brothers.
Are they the best of the old Hollywood comic acts? Because I watched, like, Duck Soup, Night at the Opera, and we watched
Night in Casablanca.
And those ones still held up, like, from end to end.
And we have to say, Hail Fredonia.
Hail, hail Fredonia.
But I think we need to tell everybody who we're talking about, because we just keep saying these guys and, you know, who's on first.
These dudes, these boys, you know, these lads.
Gentlemen. And today we're talking about Abbott and Costello, and not just Abbott and Costello. It's Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
Yes, the 1948 film directed by Charles Barton, stars Bud Abbott, Lou Costello, Lon Chaney Jr.,
Bela
Lugosi, Glenn Strange. Yes, this is the monster movie comedy, the OG monster movie comedy.
And also the OG Monster Squad, because there are a squad of monsters in this movie.
Yes, there are. And surprisingly held up pretty well for being a movie from 1948. Like, there's nothing problematic in this movie, quote unquote. This movie is still, like, good to show
No, this is a good movie. It's a great movie to introduce children to the Universal monsters, because we have two of our iconic Universal monsters, you know, Bela Lugosi and Lon Chaney Jr.
as Dracula and the Wolfman, respectively.
And then we have Glenn Strange, who is stepping in to be Frankenstein.
I think Glenn Strange is still a good Frankenstein. He played Frankenstein more than
he played Frankenstein
Karloff did, right?
3 times, I think, additional to this. But this was the first time that his Frankenstein spoke.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, so we have our classic Universal monsters, and I think this is like the end until we get Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman. Decades and decades later that we have all the monsters reunite again.
Well, Monster Squad was in the 80s. That's before that.
No, I know, but I mean, Van Helsing was a Universal production.
Oh,
so
the next time the Universal banner comes in, I gotcha.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be till, I think it was 2004, 2005, when we'd have all the monsters reunited.
My brother, unironically, says that Van Helsing is an amazing work of cinema. Randy, I'm going to tell you this.
Oh, I know, we've met a couple of times.
Randy is one of these people, he's like, no real, like, hard and fast rule about, like, movies he likes. He's like, if the movie's good, I like it. If the movie's bad, I don't like it. But I've discovered something. He likes a very, very specific subgenre of movies. And that is steampunk sci-fi shit. Where it's like, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Van Helsing fits in there. And it's like movies like that, I don't think he's seen one he doesn't like. He legit says League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is a perfect film. He has told me that in confidence.
And he also likes Ten Commandments, Ben-Hur.
Yeah, Ten Commandments, Ben-Hur. He likes Spartacus, Lawrence of Arabia. Randy's like, either I get 4-hour-long movies, or I get really weird early 2000s Hugh Jackman movies. That's his span of movies he likes.
I can respect that.
Hugh Jackman was in some bangers in the early 2000s.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal actor.
It's really weird to think that Hugh Jackman started his career as, like, a song and dance guy on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And then he came to America, and they're like, we're gonna make you Wolverine. You're gonna be the action guy.
We're gonna make you a star.
We're gonna make you a star, kid. But everything he did that was not directly related to X-Men or Wolverine, that was an action movie, all failed.
Yeah.
It's just really weird.
It is, but bringing back to
Abbott
Abbott
and
and Costello. So this is a film that I saw in the 90s. I think this was maybe around the time that I first saw the Universal Monsters. So it kind of, went hand in hand. But I'm surprised that this is your first time ever watching it.
I had never seen any Abbott and Costello film. I had only seen the Who's on First bit in isolation. I have no idea where it's from. I have no idea if it was just that bit and there was no expanded movie around it.
Yeah.
I just know that bit because it's like the most famous bit in comedy, right?
I mean, it was also famous in our wax museum that we used to go to next to Po' Boys in Buena Park. That was one of the installments in the wax museum, was the Who's on First, and it would repeat the whole
bit.
bit.
And it's like a 5-minute long bit.
Something like that, yeah. So it's an iconic segment in comedy history.
Yeah, but I had never seen any of their movies. I had no idea the shtick they had.
Mm-hmm.
And watching this, I think, is a pretty good approximation. Let me see if I get this right.
Okay.
So, Bud Abbott, he's kind of the no-nonsense, hard-nosed boss, right? Kind of bosses Costello around, tells him what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And Costello is Homer Simpson, where he's the laughable, lovable nitwit who kind of gets himself in trouble.
Yeah, so Bud Abbott is the straight man, and Lou Costello is the lovable goof that gets himself into trouble and shows, Abbott, that no, I really was right, and I'm not just being a goofball for the entire shtick.
Okay. I got that because the whole movie is based around their comedy. It's not really based around the monsters so much. It's based around them being goofballs, or basically Costello being goofballs.
Yeah.
And it's really weird to me because I don't know a lot about them, but I found out, a little bit of research, that they fucking hated each other up to this point.
Yeah, because, this was, 48?
48, they started making movies together in 1940. I don't know if they had... I assume they had, like, a vaudeville background before that.
Yeah, so they've been working together for a long time, and... yeah, of course, after a while, it's, I'm so used to you, I'm, kind of over you, but we're this, dynamic duo, so we're kind of lumped together. There's
no world where they split up and have profitable careers away from each other.
Yeah, it's a package deal. It's not like, one could leave and, have a triumphant career. It's like, no, you both want this. We're going to have both of you guys together. It's not like the Marx Brothers where it's multiple brothers, and I think it was their eldest brother. But one of the brothers, he was a straight man. He was able to leave the troupe after a while because he was just like...
you don't need me in the Marx Brothers anymore.
Yeah, it's like the Marx Brothers are still going to be the brothers. But with them, it's like, if one leaves, obviously...
that's, Laurel leaving Hardy.
Exactly.
That's George leaving the Beatles. It's a whole problem here.
It's problematic, yeah. So with them, this was an issue. They were not getting along, and then when Universal came to them with this opportunity for the movie, Lou Costello was like, absolutely not. My daughter could write a better script than this. I am fucking out.
I heard that literally everyone involved thought the movie was bad.
Yeah, everyone thought this was gonna flop. They approached Boris Karloff to be in it, and he was like, absolutely not. And respectively so. After years, and, in previous episodes, we talked about,
the physical toll playing.
They broke his body to be Frankenstein, so it's like, yeah,
and,
totally understandable that he would bow out of this movie.
And we talked about that in our Bride episode, where Boris Karloff would only come back for James Whale.
Yeah.
Basically, unless your name was James Whale, he would never play Frankenstein again. And I don't know what dirt James Whale had on Boris Karloff to have him put on the makeup again, but it had to be something good. Because in this, I know Boris Karloff, because you told me about this, he was promoting the movie, or he pretended like he was in it, or something like that.
Yeah, there was a thing where Universal came to him and they're like, can you be in it? He said no, but as a courtesy to Universal, and also because he's a nice guy, he was like, I'll go and promote it. If you want to send me out with a photographer, I'll go take pictures with the posters, or we'll go to kiosks at theaters and you can take pictures of me there, but I don't want to be in it, and please don't make me watch it. And it was just like, okay. I'm like, I've never heard, something like that before, but cool deal.
Yeah, and that's kind of the story of everyone involved in this movie, because it feels like everyone made the movie under the assumption that it was either this or nothing.
Yeah.
Because Abbott and Costello, I think at that point they were considered overexposed by the studio. Like, oh, you guys have been in so many movies, the audience is starting to dwindle because there's so much backstock so recently that there's no reason for them to keep showing up.
And then with this movie being, a smash, it, launched a new career of movies where they faced new monsters.
The Mummy, Jekyll and Hyde.
The Invisible Man. And it's just like, yeah, people love comedy, people love these monsters, and a way to get both of them together, which was kind of new for the time, it's like, we'll take it.
Well, and I wanted to talk about that because these guys had been in, because again, their movie career started in 1940, right? But from 1940 to 1948, they made like 20-something movies.
Yeah.
So in 8 years, they had made like almost 3 movies a year, and just kept going. And I can see why the studio would be like, guys, you gotta like, we're gonna cut your contract because there's so much content of you out there that we can't make more movies for you.
Yeah.
Like, we're just repeating our shtick. And then Bela Lugosi came back as Dracula because he couldn't really get any work for anything else.
That's an interesting concept. So, Bela Lugosi wasn't approached at first to make this movie.
What?
Yes, because the studio, I guess they hadn't heard from him, in a while. They assumed he was dead.
I mean...
And they found out, oh no, he's alive. Let's ask Bela if he wants to be part of the cast. And he was like, yeah, let's do it.
I mean, I don't want to be mean or nothing, but Bela Lugosi ain't looking too hot in this movie.
No, I mean, Dracula is from 1931, I believe.
Yeah, it came out 6 or 8 months before Frankenstein, so it's like April 31.
Yeah, so we've got 31 till 48.
Yeah, it's like 17 years.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
And he was already like in his 40s during Dracula, so he has to be, what, almost 60?
Somewhere in there, yeah.
Oh, jeez.
So you're able to see it, but it's just to see him in the cape again and being
nice.
Dracula, it's like, this feels right. It would have been weird if they had chosen another actor to be Dracula.
It would have been weird. I mean, the Glenn Strange thing, we'll get into that in a minute.
Yes, we will.
But it's just interesting because Lugosi took this because he couldn't get work doing anything else. And then, like, Lon Chaney took this because Lon Chaney would take any role you gave him. He had no thing where he was like, I'm too good for this, or it's like, I don't do this. Like, they would just give him roles and he'd be like, absolutely, just give me a schedule.
Yeah. Lon Chaney Jr. was just a beast. Like, yeah, let's tackle this next project. Let's do it.
I found this out. He was a workaholic character actor. Because there's a couple of producers who said, yeah, he drank a lot, but he was never rude or mean or whatever to anybody. If we ever had a part and we were like, I don't know who to give this to, they would call up Lon Chaney and he would just tell them, yeah, tell me when I got to show up on set. No questions asked.
Very professional.
Oh, yeah.
Very professional, very ready to go. And I have kind of something, an interesting fact about this movie that, is brand new to me. Brand new to you, obviously. But wow. Lon Chaney Jr. actually played 2 monsters in this movie.
Oh, yeah, I know this one. I actually do know this one, because he played Frankenstein when they had to chuck the actress out the window.
Yeah, that's right.
Because what was it? Was it Glenn Strange couldn't, like, pick her up, or Glenn Strange didn't want to do it, or something?
No. That day, I guess when they were going to film the scene where he throws Dr. Murray out the window in the laboratory, Glenn Strange tripped over a camera cable and broke his ankle.
Oh, Jesus.
So it was a thing.
He's already not in this movie that much.
No, so it was a thing where it was Lon Chaney Jr.'s day off, and they called him and they're like, hey, can we, put you in makeup? We need to do this scene. He was like, absolutely. Showed up, did the scene. You can't even tell the switch.
Not
and
really.
It's like, good on you, Lon Chaney. It's like, good actor. You got to be 2 iconic monsters in one movie.
Well, over the course of his career, he was 4. Because he was the Wolfman in a movie. He was Dracula in another, and he was Frankenstein in another one.
And he was the Mummy.
Yeah, that's the thing. Lon Chaney Jr. had 0 fucks to give. If you gave him a ham sandwich and any motivation, he would just do your movie.
You and your Brando ham sandwiches.
Brando, from my understanding, was a connoisseur of sandwiches. Also hot dogs.
But
have you heard the tale of Marlon Brando's late night hot dog binges? They're legend.
To you, it's always the ham sandwich. You never elaborate. You never say chicken parm, Monte Cristo, bologna.
Ham sandwich is the classic. Ham sandwich is a classic sandwich.
But variety.
Okay, I understand variety. It is the spice of life. I love a chicken parm sandwich. I love myself a nice PB&J.
Meatball sandwich.
Meatball sandwiches. The whole huge fan. But if I'm going, the quintessential sandwich, and our viewers can comment about this, the quintessential sandwich is the ham sandwich. Get a couple slices of deli ham on there, put some mayo, mustard, maybe a slice of tomato on there, a little bit of lettuce, between two slices of nice wheat bread. That is the traditional sandwich.
I prefer turkey.
And you can be wrong. That's totally fine.
It's okay. You're wrong all the time.
But yeah, so Abbott and Costello.
Yeah, he's played multiple monsters, almost all of the iconic monsters.
Yeah.
But to play two of them in one film is pretty cool. Because it's usually,
cool.
It's one or the other. It's not, you get to be multiple people. And he gets to be Frankenstein and the Wolfman.
The two best ones.
Exactly. Well, I mean, I love Dracula. You can't leave Dracula out.
Dracula's the one I think has aged the most out of all of the classic Universal movies. It's still good, but that one is borderline a silent film, and you can tell.
Yeah.
And it's like the weird amalgamations of the old silent movies moving into sound, and the two styles don't mesh totally right.
Okay, so since I'm so used to this movie and you're brand new to this, was it weird for you to see Dracula with a score underneath him?
Super weird.
Yeah.
The whole, actually, honestly, just seeing Bela Lugosi play this kind of Dracula was weird. Because Bela Lugosi, he was a working actor for years and years and years.
Stage actor.
Huge stage actor. And in Hollywood, he had a huge problem getting work after Dracula because they only wanted for horror stuff.
Yeah.
And his accent pretty much locked him off from being a mainstream leading man.
Yeah.
Because, rightfully so, it's 1930-ish or whatever. They, sound is a new thing. American audiences aren't really used to people having anything other than a Midwestern accent. And, yeah, Bela Lugosi had a huge problem with that. But to see him play Dracula again, and it's he's playing kind of the same role, but I wonder if that 17-year difference came into effect and he was I'm gonna try and do something totally different, because this Dracula is more like a maniacal madman than the suave creature of the night.
Well, maniacal, but also he's having a good time.
Oh yeah, he is loving every moment.
He goes to the dance.
Okay, the whole thing about there being a dance in this, about there being the House of Horrors. There's the castle that has the comically large door knockers. This movie,
which would probably inspire young Frankenstein.
What knockers?
Thank you, Doctor.
But that's the thing. So much of this movie feels like a cartoon, and I think Bela Lugosi is playing the cartoon version of Dracula. Glenn Strange is straight up the cartoon version of Frankenstein.
Yeah, when I was sitting there watching him, it's we just watched The Bride, so obviously, we got to study Boris Karloff as Frankenstein. And in this one, it was kind of, watching him, and I was he reminds me a little bit of Boris, but also a little bit of Fred Gwynne as Herman Munster.
The makeup is exactly the same.
Do you know how Glenn Strange kind of got typecasted into being Frankenstein?
I assume it's because he's 6'6" and big.
That too, but also, I guess he was at the commissary in Universal Studios, in between movies, and Jack Pierce happened to see him in the commissary. I was hey, I want to practice this makeup technique on you. I'll pay you $5-10. Will you sit with me after your day's done? And Glenn Strange agreed, and he did him up in the Frankenstein makeup, the traditional makeup, and Jack Pierce was kind of wow, your make really sets well with the Frankenstein makeup. So this is what kind of put him on the path to being
the Frankenstein guy, the monster guy.
And this was before Universal let go of Jack Pierce, because it was, it's cheaper to bring in, people that are faster, and they'll use, tips and tricks and, more rubber, plastic, prosthetic stuff.
Than to have Jack Pierce spend 6 hours with an actor trying to sculpt
creating a masterpiece. Yeah, so it was let's bring in some new people, new blood, and have them do it faster. But it was thanks to Jack Pierce that gave Glenn Strange this new run as Frankenstein's monster, and I think he looks the best compared to some of other Frankensteins we've gotten down the line.
I say that this version of Frankenstein we see in this movie, this is the Frankenstein that audiences think Frankenstein looks like, because he's the big one. He has the platform shoes. He walks with his arms out. He doesn't act like Carlos Frankenstein.
Who, also has, the flat top, boxy head and, the black clothes, the platforms, but he doesn't do the zombie walk or the mummy walk with his arms out. He walks like a person.
Yeah, that's the thing I want to get at. Carlos Frankenstein, like, that's, probably the best actual performance as the character, but I think Glenn Strange, how he looks, how he moves, how he and talks or whatever, that's the version I think pop culture has assimilated into being, that's like the stereotypical Frankenstein. If you're doing a Frankenstein gimmick, you're doing Glenn Strange's Frankenstein.
Or kind of like how you fused Frankenstein and the Bride together when you thought they were one completed thing.
Yeah.
I think that's what maybe people have done with Boris Karloff and Glenn Strange, where they've kind of fused them into one character.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, they're two separate actors. Makeup is almost spot on for the two of them.
I don't think so. I think Glenn Strange's makeup looks a little bit more cartoony. It's a little bit more exaggerated. It's not nearly as like refined or as clean as Karloff's. This one you can tell he's wearing like a headpiece.
Yeah. He's wearing even Karloff, he was wearing the plastic flat top in The Bride of Frankenstein. That was something that Jack Pierce came up with to
speed up the process.
Speed up the process and save, time for Karloff so he wouldn't have to sit in the chair. But yeah, it's more rubberized, and I think there was it was either an interview with Glenn Strange or someone during the making of the movie that the flat top was so tightly, attached to his head, he would sweat, and then he would just hear the sweat kind of slosh around in there because there was no way for it to trap, to get under the glue that was on his forehead or all over his head, so he would just film and hear it, rattling back and forth.
That must be one of the biggest pains in the ass is if you're trying to give a good performance and you just hear sloshing all night.
All night, having that, extra weight of the water just accumulating in there. But also, he has his eyes closed for most of his performance.
He's not in most of the movie.
No, that's why I said most of his performance, not most of the movie. And it's just kind of like, I don't know if that's a character choice or an actor choice. And it's just like, okay, so you've got this big hulking guy, and it's like, I hope he doesn't fall down. I hope...
his 6-inch platform shoes.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I just realized something. We should probably tell people what the fuck the movie's about.
Go on, tell them.
We have a dim-witted cargo worker is pulled into a plot by Dracula to use his simple mind to better control Frankenstein's monster. But standing in his way is the Wolfman and the dimwit's best friend, the fast-talking Bud Abbott. And they combine their forces to thwart Dracula and save the day. Yeah, it's basically what's going on here.
Yeah.
Dracula wants to take over the world.
Basically, and he wants to use Frankenstein's monster as his minion.
Don't know what his plan is. Really? I'm like, you're Dracula, and it's shown in the movie you can hypnotize people and make them bend to your will.
Yeah.
Why aren't you just doing that more? That seems more powerful than having a 8-foot tall, strong man essentially.
Well, I guess he's gonna do his bidding while he's asleep during the day.
I guess.
Because, you have your patsy and you tell him, okay, I'm about to go to sleep, so while I'm asleep, you clean up the castle, you get things ready, and at sunset, I'll give you more instructions.
Wait a minute, this sounds vaguely familiar. But that's the basic plot of the movie. And let's be honest, the plot of this movie doesn't matter. Like, it's just there
It's a fun movie.
Yeah, it's just there for Abbott and Costello to get to setting to do gags.
Yeah.
And there's a few, good settings they have in here. The castle's a lot of fun. The basement dungeon's a lot of fun. The hotel has a couple of good bits. The settings they're doing it in, they're making the most out of the gag.
Yeah, and fun fact, part of the castle is actually real.
That's really weird. Because was it all the interiors or one room or what?
They didn't go into too many specifics, so it's probably maybe a couple of rooms, maybe some of the exteriors, like the doors, maybe the main salon going into the room. Because obviously this man didn't have the moat beneath the house.
That's what I'm saying, and I'm like,
if
he did, so inefficient though.
If he did, that would be cool.
90% of this is on a soundstage. Why would you even want to go on location for it? That seems so weird, but I mean, that's super cool. It's probably to build something close to this, it would cost too much money, I guess.
Yeah.
That seems really weird.
Yeah, I mean, this home is still around. I guess maybe the people that owned the home before gave it to a church, so now it's kind of like church property, and they take care of kids and other people in need, so it's still around.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah, the more you know. I had no idea about this. I was, in the same boat as you. It's a matte painting, and it's, practical sets, but no, some of it's real.
All right. But the actual movie, I just want to ask you, because you love this movie, and I'm going to ask, is it because of Abbott and Costello's or because of the monsters? And I want you to, actually give me a real answer.
It's probably more because of the monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously I love monsters, and it's Universal monsters, so
the real bread and butter. Lugosi's back,
yes.
Chaney's in. You see Frankenstein.
Yeah, but I also enjoy Abbott and Costello movies. Mm-hmm. I grew up with those too, so it's a little bit of both, leaning more towards the monsters.
Okay. On that note, what is it with Abbott and Costello you find funny?
I mean, it's the same as the Marx Brothers. You have the straight man, and then you have the goofballs, and it's the straight man trying to round everybody up, but ultimately the goofballs win because it's more fun to be goofy and get into trouble.
Okay. Now, don't get me wrong, I think that's like their shtick, that's why they work, but I feel like there's moments where Lou Costello is so over the top in playing the goofball, and it starts bordering on, is he self-parroting this shtick?
This is what he's like in a lot of his movies.
Okay.
Where he's kind of on the Jackie Gleason level of kind of okay, we're really gonna kind of push the borders of goofiness. Mm-hmm. But that's basically who he is in these movies.
Okay. Cool, because I got note.
Okay.
Because I found them very funny near the latter half of the movie than at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because the beginning is very, old style shtick,
Mm-hmm.
Lou Costello's being a dummy. He's pulling boxes and things are falling and all this other stuff. And there's one bit when they're in the House of Monsters, House of Horrors, and it's the thing where he's reading Dracula's legend, and then Dracula is slowly getting out of the coffin, and then he screams. Then Dracula goes back in the coffin, and Abbott comes in. He's like, "What's happening?" He's like, "There's something here," and he's like, "Nothing's here," and leaves. And that happens 6 or 7 times.
Oh, yeah. It's a long scene, a long, piece of the shtick.
Yeah,
and I mean, that kind of goes with, the Who's on First, where that, kind of goes on for, 5 to 10 minutes, where it's just kind of the same thing over and over. So I agree with you, where it's funny, but then they keep going with it, and it's okay, I think you could have condensed it down to, a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
And then jumped onto the rest of the scene where Dracula gets out of the coffin, and he goes and blends in with the rest of the mannequins in the room.
Yes.
But yeah.
And I think that's something I just wanted to point out about the comedy of the movie. Because once they're trying to do wordplay, once they're doing zingers or stuff like that stuff still holds up.
Yeah.
That stuff's still good. I even think basically as soon as Lon Chaney shows up in the movie and they're in the hotel's a great bit.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing where it's they're playing this bit to the hilt. They're going kind of along with it, but it's still working.
I mean, it's the same when they're on the island at the party, and Lon Chaney's, going into his monologue about how he's about to turn into a wolf, and he's like, the moon's out, and when it's out, I turn into a wolf, and then you have Lou Costello that chimes in with the zinger, you're like, yeah, you and every, 40 other thousand men, they turn into wolves too, and then...
They turn into wolves at midnight when, lovely girls are around.
Oh, that's when, Lon Chaney Jr.'s are like, I'm being serious, and it's just oh crap, okay.
I love Lon Chaney in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Lon Chaney Jr. in this movie is playing everything so serious. He is dead serious in this movie, and it makes it more funny because he's in a different movie than everyone else, and that's that's like Leslie Nielsen in Airplane, where Leslie Nielsen, if you watch that movie,
great movie.
Amazing movie. He is in a mid-70s drama. He is playing everything dead straight. Mm-hmm. There's no farce. There's no wink nudge at the camera. He's playing everything dead serious. Lon Chaney's doing the same thing, and he's the straighter man than Bud Abbott.
Oh yeah, but what also shows the genius of Lon Chaney Jr. is that he's able to play the straight man as Larry Talbot. This is serious, you need to take me serious, I can hurt people, I could kill people. But when he's the Wolfman, he's goofier because he's tripping over plants in the forest.
He gets to do all the slapstick.
Yeah,
he gets to do all the fall gags and all that stuff.
Yeah, so it's kind of cool to see him contrast between, being this serious character and to, Wilbur's struggling with, should I have taken that piece of fruit? He might count all his free fruit that he gets in his room. Maybe I should take it back. Let me leave him a note. And you have the Wolfman, lurking around and, oh, you know what? Oh, who opened that door? Let me just slam the door in the Wolfman's face.
Slams in the Wolfman's face. Every time Costello walks a couple feet, that's exactly when the Wolfman pounces and falls over something.
He kicks the Wolfman in the butt, thinking it's
Costello's rummaging around.
Yeah, and he's telling me, behave, we gotta look, we gotta, find our way out of here.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. The bits like that, where it's like, oh, no, these guys are crafting good bits, and they're cutting out when they need to. They're not overstaying their welcome.
Yeah.
The first half of the movie, I feel that's every bit in the first, I guess, not first half, first 20 minutes of the movie, where, man, some of these bits go on for a long time, and they're kind of playing into the hilt. It's like late stage Family Guy, where it's, oh, this is a funny joke, and then it keeps going until it's not funny.
Yeah.
And then they keep going even farther beyond that until it's funny again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Abbott and Costello's doing that, but they're not coming back around to it being funny again. They're just going way long with it.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the scene with Wilbur reading the Legend of Dracula and the candle, which is a great scene, but, just cut it down by a few minutes and then jump on to the next, because,
He reads the whole Legend of Dracula.
He reads it, and it's, the candle moving and calling Chick back, Chick Young, I remembered his name now.
Yeah.
And,
Bud Abbott.
Yeah, Bud Abbott, and then Wilbur Gray by Lou Costello. And, just them being in that house of horrors, which is creepy, because those mannequins are just very creepy.
That's another thing. The movie actually has a sense of when it's a comedy and when it's a horror movie. Mm-hmm. When they're in the woods, that's a horror movie.
Yeah.
When they're in the House of Horrors, that's a horror movie.
Yeah.
But when they're in, the castle or the dungeon, it's oh, this is a comedy.
This is Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, it's Scooby-Doo. And I think that's the thing. The movie actually has a good sense of tone and atmosphere and when to make that switch.
Yeah. Because
beginning of the movie where they're at the cargo station, oh, this is funny.
Yeah.
It's all lighthearted, everything's lit like a comedy. But then when they're in the House of Horrors, boom, right to a horror movie. When they're in the laboratory, okay, this is played for laughs, so it's a comedy. But when they're running away and they light Glenn Strange on fire, oh, this is a horror movie because it's lit differently, and that's something that's interesting to see in 1948, that we had figured out how to adjust tone and atmosphere from scene to scene and meld them in a way where visually you can tell that, oh, this is the comedy part, this is the horror part, and be able to work in between them.
Yeah, and that's why I love this movie so much, because it's not, one or the other. They're really able to blend both of these genres together, and it doesn't feel like, ooh, this one's kind of lacking, or this one was a little weak.
Or you're watching, the scary scene, and you're it's lit like I Love Lucy show.
Yeah.
Or it's oh, you're watching, the funny scene, and you're this is, this looks like the Wolfman. It's all spooky and dark, and, I can't laugh at this because it doesn't, the tone and the atmosphere doesn't fit it.
Yeah.
Which, goes to the filmmakers for this one.
Yeah, because this was directed by Charles Barton. And yes. I wasn't, too familiar with him until I did, my research. He did a lot of TV, which was kind of
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, he was on Hazel, the Patty Duke show. He did a lot of Disney. He did an episode of The Munsters, McHale's Navy. So, Dennis the Menace. So, he's got, a huge...
He's got a lot of pedigree in 50s TV.
Yeah, which was a lot of comedic, TV.
Comedic sitcoms really got into their own in the 1950s.
So, I think it was a good choice for them to choose him for this, because he was really able to lean onto that, strength of his sitcom background and kind of, comedic sitcom background. And, kind of blend it with the horror genre.
You know who they could not lean on for this movie, though? Any of the 3 screenwriters.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to ask you this right now. Do you think this is a structured, like, solid plot or story, or is this just vignettes of monsters in Abbott and Costello?
Yeah, I could say it's more of a vignette. I mean, it's more just fun with the monsters and how can we, make it funnier in each scene, leading up to, the castle scene at the end where, Abbott and Costello are being chased by Frankenstein, and then you have Dracula and the Wolfman brawling through each room of the house, which is
best part of the movie.
Oh my god, I love seeing, they're picking up chairs, they're picking up plants in the rooms and throwing them at each other.
Yeah, when the Wolfman and Dracula are fighting, and you're just like, oh, you're looking at this epic battle in the background as Abbott and Costello are running away from Frankenstein, and it's like, this is great shtick.
Yeah.
Like, there's something in the background you really want to be seeing, but these two goofballs are fighting Frankenstein, and you're trying to divide your attention. Mm-hmm. And that one's actually, like, just really well-crafted comedy, and it also is like, this is Scooby-Doo. Yeah. That is exactly like a Scooby-Doo move.
A lot of fun stuff about this movie.
But what's the topic conversation we want to move on to?
Well, there is a controversy about this film, and a lot of people that love this film are still fighting this conversation of, should this be considered part of the Universal Classic Monsters, or is this just kind of like a canon film where they happen to be in this Abbott and Costello movie?
Oh, that's actually a good question. Is this like a Jason or Freddy versus Jason conversation? Like, which franchise do you count it in?
Yeah. Or is it its own
beast? Is that not canon? Because this was made by Universal, right?
Yes, this is a Universal picture with Universal characters. I mean, you've got Bela Lugosi as Dracula and Lon Chaney Jr. as the Wolfman. It's
but look, let's be honest here. Bela Lugosi played Dracula one other time before this, and then there's 6 Dracula movies with him not as Dracula.
Yeah.
All right, so saying that, though, if we're using Bela Lugosi as only the ones he is in our canon, then Dracula has 1 movie other than this.
Yeah.
So my thinking is, I would honestly probably quantify this as an Abbott and Costello movie. I don't think this would, granted, movies back then, canon didn't really exist, right?
No, this is, more of a new thing, but this has been going on for decades where people are trying to figure out
which movie do we count this in the fandom?
Yeah, it's like, should this be, part of the classic monsters, or should this be canon? I'm kind of stuck in the middle because it feels a lot like canon, where, it's just...
It's nice. You want it to be, because then you can say Abbott and Costello exist with the Wolfman and Frankenstein and Dracula.
Exactly, and that's the struggle, because it's like, I want it to be considered part of the classic monsters, but then it's like, it's really its own thing.
It's also like a decade out from the last, like, true classic monsters we're getting.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is 48, and then, a couple years later we get Creature, which is like the last of the classic monsters. Yeah. So it's still in that realm of time.
I got one. Okay. This is kind of related to that, but I feel it's a little bit more into the actual movie itself.
Okay.
This is called Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Yeah.
This Frankenstein is barely in this movie.
Yeah.
So if we're calling it canon or in line with any of the... This is not a Frankenstein movie.
No.
Like, at all.
No.
Why was it called Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein and not Abbott and Costello Meet Dracula or the Wolfman?
Or Meets the Monsters.
Like, why call it... Why name check Frankenstein?
Maybe it was just the strength that Frankenstein has.
To market?
Yeah, it could have been a thing where it's like, everybody loved Dracula. It came out, like 9 months before Frankenstein did. And, Frankenstein just did as well as Dracula did.
Wolfman's the more recent picture, but he doesn't have, like, the pedigree yet.
Yeah, and of the monsters, he's more on the scarier side. So maybe for marketing, they thought this might be a better sell to adult audiences and younger audiences with Frankenstein, where it would kind of pull kids and families into, it shouldn't be too scary if we bring the family to come see this movie.
I feel you put Abbott and Costello on the title, you're getting a younger audience. I think that signals the audience is going to be meant for younger kids.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they were probably for everybody, but, now in, like, this generations past, it was also, it's slapstick, but it's, appropriate, so you could show it to kids, older people can watch it.
That I got a lot of kid vibes from this. Like, this is definitely a movie that I could show, honestly, a 5-year-old, 8-year-old this, and they would dig it.
Yeah, I remember growing up, we had a lot of their movies on tape, And it would just be a thing of, okay, I'll put the tape in for you because it's Abbott and Costello. There's not going to be anything bad in it.
Oh my god. Okay. I got a story kind of like that. So I was probably 8 or 9, and I'm at my cousin's house, right? And, uncle's there, and he's like, oh, we're gonna, like, put a movie in so you guys can, like, play around. It'll be fine. Whatever. Yeah. And the movie they put in is The Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
Oh, yeah.
Terry Gilliam movie. It's a fantasy. It's fun, right? And it's like, ooh, fantasy characters, and they're going around, and it's, it's a fun romp, right? And, watching the movie, I'm like, oh, this is going to be so fun, it's all cool. That movie's a little bit of nightmare fuel, and also you get to see, like, a young Uma Thurman nude in that movie. Yeah, because my uncle hadn't seen the movie. He's like, oh, this sounds like a kid's movie.
Yeah, let's pop it in.
Pop it in. And it is, a kid's movie. It's a kid-friendly movie, but it's like, Robin Williams is a floating head on a space dish, and I'm like, that's weird. And then naked Uma Thurman, I'm like, oh, so this is what puberty feels like. But that's the thing, like, I assume you've had that as a kid where your parents or somebody's like, this looks like a kid's movie, throws it in, and it's like, that is nightmare fuel forever. Was that the Sleepy Hollow movie?
No, I mean, that was one where, I was told at the time you can't watch it, and my dad's like, oh, let's watch it. And I was like, oh my god, Christopher Walken as the Horseman's kind of terrifying. The Witch in the Woods.
Oh, okay.
She's nightmare fuel.
Okay, so, a fun fact about that, another one, because that was one of the few movies, when DVD was coming out, that was like one of the first movies my sister bought.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think she wanted like a spooky movie, but she didn't want to get a slasher, and I think it was cheap. So I remember as a wee lad watching that movie over and over again, because it was, DVD, that seems so cool. It's on a disc and everything. Yeah, that movie is not made for kids.
No.
That movie was horrible. I was afraid of Christopher Walken for years. Not the Headless Horseman. Christopher Walken.
The Bleeding Tree.
The Bleeding Tree was weird. I thought there was a weeping willow tree, or a tree that kind of looked like that one at my school. And I was like, I ain't going near that fucker.
That thing's gonna open and the Horseman's gonna come out.
Yeah, and that was the thing. There's some movies where I don't know why my parents thought this is okay for a kid. This is fine.
Yeah, I mean, that was me with Austin Powers. My dad showed me that for the first time, and I was like, I mean, it's not like, it's not scary or anything.
It's not scary really raunchy.
Yeah, it's very raunchy, and then you have a kid that's, picking up on the jokes, but not really picking up on the jokes, so I would, like, beat out some of these one-liners, and it would be like, I shouldn't be saying that.
You shouldn't be saying to your elementary school teachers, I'm horny, baby, yeah.
Well, never said that, but no.
Never came up to you? Are you Randy, honey?
No, never said that, but, there's a lot of writing in the movie that it's like, yeah, kids shouldn't be listening to that, and then repeating it to friends and family, because it's just like, you shouldn't be saying that.
Oh, God, that was a whole other can of worms. But Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, totally safe for kids.
Yeah, very
totally
safe.
For
I mean,
work.
I've seen a lot of their movies. It's never been like, ooh, that's a little bit, rough for a younger audience.
It's also not like the Road to films that Bing Crosby and Bill Hope do, where they might be funny, but they are problematic.
I don't think I've seen those before.
Some of them are fun. They're like half musicals, half comedies, and they're all like parodies or satires of films at the time. Like they did one, Road to Morocco, where it's a send up to all those like Arabian adventure films and stuff like that. Where it's like, you guys, come on, these movies are ridiculous, and they're poking fun at it.
And just like,
but they're doing that, and also some of them are obviously in brownface. It's like that kind of shit.
Yeah, versus like Marx Brothers when they did A Night in Casablanca, when they're making fun of Casablanca and just a lot of these movies, but they're not, doing it to offend anybody. So it's like, we see the spectrum of, where people take it a little too far, and some people, they know exactly where to, stay within the lines.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not even like the lines, it's like, how culture has shifted so much, especially in comedy.
Yeah.
Like there's the Peter Sellers movie, The Party, where he plays an Indian man. It also, by the way, my dad loves that movie because my dad loves every Peter Sellers movie. Yeah, didn't know that until I was a grown man, and I found out my dad will watch any Peter Sellers movie, no questions asked. He thinks he's hilarious. But there's stuff like that where it's like, okay, comedy has shifted a lot in the last, 30 years even. And, like, Abbott and Costello, they're still pretty good. Like, you can still, like, vibe to this. Marx Brothers, you can really vibe to. They're really funny.
Yeah.
But it's...
Because, I mean, Abbott and Costello is a lot of physical comedy.
Mhm.
And Marx Brothers, it's, cut right in the middle of physical and witty comedy.
Physical, witty, there's one-liners, there's whole musical numbers in there's movies.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Abbott and Costello, they're good. They're real good at their lane. I just don't know if I would you qualify them as, like, S-tier comic duos in comic history?
Oh, definitely.
S-tier or just A-tier? Are they up there, or would you compare them to say they're as good as the Marx Brothers?
I wouldn't say they're as good as the Marx Brothers, because the Marx Brothers are like their own variety show.
Yeah.
So
they're a different act.
They're a completely different act. I mean, you could show them to kids, but at the same time, they're more, geared to adults.
Would get him.
Yeah. So with Abbott and Costello, it's more family fun.
Laurel and Hardy?
Ooh, I love Laurel and Hardy too.
Would you set them up, Laurel and Hardy, and that'd be a fair fight 1-to-1?
Yeah, because I mean, it's another dynamic duo.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's kind of hard to find these pair acts versus you either have a group, you have a single person like Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton.
Yeah. The comedy group pretty much died in, the 50s, 60s? Because I know SNL is, like, a thing in, like, the 70s onwards,
yeah.
But that's, like, a comedy troupe, and that's, like, TV, and they're all sketch acts, but...
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, can you think of any, comic duo or comic group that just is successful now?
I mean, I know we had this conversation, what was it, like a few days ago, where we were trying to figure out...
Something like that.
We were trying to figure out if there's, like, comedy duos now.
Like an Abbott and Costello, where the movie sold on, it's these two funny men in this movie. And I'm thinking, like, Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly, those were the only two I can think of in recent years.
I mean, if we're gonna, like, go Abbott and Costello level, I was thinking The Rock and Kevin Hart, because they do, like family-friendly movies, like Jumanji.
Mm.
So it's kind of like, they know where they can lean, like, okay, we gotta be good for the kids that are watching us.
And we gotta be funny, and they do have a lot more of a straight man, goofy man aesthetic.
Yeah, and then they're able to do movies where, they can lean more towards the adult humor.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I think the two of them have a good range, kind of like Abbott and Costello, where they can kind of entertain everybody and not just, one single group or a younger audience.
Yeah. And that's, I think, a thing about comedy where, because of, like, the SNL change up, because I know I bring this up all the time, but yeah, SNL, like, shifted comedy a lot in the 70s. And we still feel that effects now. Like, most of our comic actors now come from, like, the SNL crew. And it's almost like, I don't know if you can get an organic Abbott and Costello anymore. Mostly because I think they're so ingrained in, like, that old school vaudeville performance and all that stuff. I don't know if we'll get another good comedy duo or comedy act that exists in films as, like, a comedy duo.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I think the closest we're going to get, at least right now, is The Rock and Kevin Hart, because they're so versatile. It's like they can appeal to adult audiences, they can appeal to child audiences, and it's really hard to get that, when there's a lot of stand-up comedians and it's like, oh no, you are very much just for adults.
Yeah.
Or you're very, stand-up where I only do, like, packed,
I'm a stand-up comedian. I'm not an actor. And,
yeah.
And the other thing with The Rock and Kevin Hart, they're two giant stars that are just in movies together and being funny.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see, especially Kevin Hart, because he, went from stand-up stand-up comedian to a actor, and he kind of, goes back and forth now where he does his own, like, stand-up, comedy hours for, like, Netflix or whatever.
The specials.
Yeah, whatever specials he's working on. But I don't know if we're ever going to get, like, a true Abbott and Costello again, because they were vaudevillian, and
this style is also so gone.
Yeah, I mean, it was gone, when this was, around in the 40s, and it was just, these are the remnants of the actors that were part of this world and were able to survive.
Yeah, and that's another thing, because Abbott and Costello, I think we said at the beginning that their career was, like, going downward when this came out, because they had worked for like 8 years. They released like 20 movies, and they were like, all right, guys, we're rounding out, and they make this, it's a big hit, and they grinned and bared for another 10 years or another 8 years, because I think their careers were over in 55 whenever Costello passed away.
Yeah.
And they made another 15, 20 movies. So it's really weird to think, Abbott and Costello as, oh, these guys were like, the last guard of the old vaudeville types, and they were these comic actors of this like huge generation. When, if you really think about it, their career was only like 15 years. Their entire run, every movie encapsulated in 10-15 years. Whereas now, like, I guess Chevy Chase, Bill Murray, those guys, they were huge in like the late 70s into the 80s.
Yeah.
And they were comedic gods. Eddie Murphy literally owned the 1980s as the comedian. And it's just interesting to think about it, where the lifespan of comic acts is pretty stringent. I don't think there are that many comic acts that span more than a couple years, and I think now it's almost like you can only really be funny for like 2 or 3 years before you have to get a new comic act in, because culture speeds up so much.
Yeah, or you have, the actors themselves that are maybe tired of being comedians and they want to do more serious roles, or musical roles, just they want to change it up versus being the funny person all the time. That
happens to Adam Sandler. Every 10 years he does like a Punch Drunk Love or an Uncut Gems to prove that, no guys, I'm an amazing actor. I just really want to make funny movies with my friends.
Yeah. Which there's nothing wrong with, but you could totally understand it, An artist is going to get tired of, working on the same, specialty thing over and over again. It's just, expanding your wings and trying something different. And I think this movie, kind of helped Abbott and Costello, because
it saved their career.
It saved their career. I think they were both paid like $1 million for this movie, which, in the...
What the fuck?
Yeah, they were paid a lot for this movie. They really didn't want to do it, and the studio was like, no, we need you guys.
Hold. Rounding it back. This movie comes out in 1948, and you're telling me these two guys got paid $1 million a pop?
I'm pretty sure. I think I have it in my notes somewhere. Because
I'm getting the inflation calculator.
Because Lou Costello really did not want to do this, and they were just like, no, we need to make this happen. And let's see. He was given a $50,000 advance in his salary just for signing.
Just for signing. So that's not like his gross pay for the movie. That's just for his signing bonus. Okay, so for people curious, $1 million in 1948 adjusted for 1922, they both got paid like $12 million a pop to be in this movie. That's an insane amount of money.
And, the budget for this movie was $800,000.
Wait, the budget is $800,000? Then they couldn't have gotten paid $1 million.
Well, you want to know what the worldwide gross was?
What?
$4.8 million.
Oh, damn.
So they really made their money back.
Again, they couldn't have gotten paid $1 million for this movie. If they got paid 50 G's was like 600 grand back in the day. But I'm like, my God, that is an exorbitant amount of money for these guys.
Yeah.
Who, like, let's be honest, their last couple of movies didn't make a whole lot of money, and they were, like, on the decline. The studio was gonna, like, shelf them for a few years. To be able to get that kind of cash in pocket, that is insane.
Yeah. The studio wanted them, and they were willing to do whatever they could get to get them, and
To what? Squeeze out one last movie before they shelf them?
Shelf them, or, the monsters, kind of have one last hurrah to have multiple monsters in one movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked. It was kind of like their Hail Mary shot, and they landed it.
All right. That's very impressive.
Yeah.
But yeah. So before we round up, tell everybody thoughts, opinions, whatever, I would like to ask if you have anything for Boo's Trivia Corner.
Well, I do have some trivia facts for this movie. So, earlier on in the podcast, I talked about how they were under the impression that Bela Lugosi was dead at the time that they were planning this movie out.
As the song goes.
Yes. So, apparently, this was the last movie that Bela Lugosi did for a major studio.
Oh, yeah, because he started doing stuff with like Ed Wood in the 50s, right?
Yeah, so this was his last like major, motion picture movie that he did.
Mm.
Let's see, another trivia fact I have. This one involves Tarantino.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's, cited from a interview with Tarantino that this film was a big influence on him on how to blend different genres together. And that's what we see in his films where he's able to,
blend crime, comedy, westerns, and all their actions. And yeah, I see where she's getting at.
Yeah, so it's not just, people like me that are diehard, monster lovers. It's, also filmmakers like Tarantino where it's like, oh, you know what? You can blend, something as, wide apart as comedy and horror and tie them up and you have a really good film.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with, like, Pulp Fiction, because he keeps quantifying it when people ask, like, where do you put this as, like, your genre or whatever, and they're like, oh, it's like a crime film. And he's like, it's more like a comedy.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, it's a comedy. Well, it's also a little bit of like a romance, right? And it's like, well, we'll put in the romance. Well, it's also a little bit of an action movie. We'll put it over there. It's also a little bit of an exploitation movie. His movies blend a lot of genres.
And then we're going to drop some surfer music in it.
Oh, obviously. Jackie Brown, there you go.
Yeah.
But, okay, that's really cool.
Yeah, and then one fact that I kind of love, because I love Lon Chaney Jr.'s The Wolfman, scared me since I was a kid. This is the first time that his Wolfman has appeared in London.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I feel there was a sequel where he was in London.
Nope, this is the only film.
Weird.
And the fact that he gets to open the film, too. It's not Abbott and Costello.
True.
It's him in London. It's him turning into the Wolfman, so it's like, okay, like, all right, you go, Lon Chaney.
Again, best part of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
He's the best actor in the movie, he's doing the best performance, and he's, best part of the movie.
And I think my final trivia fact of this movie, even though it's hard not to just,
keep spewing.
Keep going with the trivia, but the part where Wilbur gets knocked on the chin by Frankenstein when he breaks through the door, when they're trying to keep him locked in the room, that actually wasn't scripted.
Oh, did Glenn Strange just punch Costello through the door?
No, Costello deliberately stepped off of his mark. Mm-hmm. And, they called for, the action to happen in the scene. And, Glenn Strange punches through the door, got him on the chin on accident. And, in the movie when we see him, his eyes are practically rolling in his head. That was his actual reaction to getting,
Yeah, to getting cold-cocked by this 6'6" behemoth of a man.
Yeah, and the director, he loved, the reaction and just how everything played out. He was like, no, I want that for the film.
All right, I like it. Suffering for your art.
Exactly. And that is all my trivia for this movie.
And with that, the final decision on the movie. So, your final thoughts on Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
2 very strong thumbs up. I love this movie. The argument that I was making for most of this episode is that this is for all audiences. It's, a great movie to start children with if they want to get into the monster genre. Even if they want to just get into physical comedy, where it's not just, animated stuff. It's 2 guys, bumbling around on crates or...
Because they're living cartoons.
Yeah, they're living cartoons. They're being chased by monsters. You've got monsters fighting monsters. There's just so much happening in this movie. I love it. It's blended very beautifully together. I love the score. I love the opening intro with the drawn-in monsters as the cartoon monsters as they're, finding each other and walking up that hill together. It's like, I love it so much. I love this whole movie.
All right. One thumb up. It was good.
Just one thumb? Is your other thumb broken? Are you okay?
I can give it like 1.5 thumbs up. Because I think the opening is a little slow. I do think all the comedy, for the most part, still works. I think this is definitely great for kids. And I'm intrigued to watch some more Abbott and Costello movies. Probably like Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy and like that monster.
The Invisible Man, because
I really like The Invisible Man.
Yeah.
But I would say this is a good movie. This is a solid flick, and I think this Halloween, if you got some kids, you can put this on and you'll have a great night. But yeah, that's Abbott and Costello Meets Frankenstein.
It was. And it's still great. It still holds up.
Yeah, it holds up pretty well. But, what are we watching for our bonus episode? Because that's the surprise this week.
That is. I wasn't quite ready to let go of Monstober because I can't. Halloween can't, be over yet, but in a way, it is kind of over. Because
it's very much over.
Because we're going to be talking about a new film, kind of controversial at the moment.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about Halloween Ends.
Yeah, that's the newest David Gordon Green Halloween film. It's the end of the climactic trilogy.
The franchise.
Of the franchise. It's being billed as the last time we'll see Jamie Lee Curtis fighting Michael Myers. It's a movie that you have been looking forward to for a long time.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about it because, that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
But that's going to be a bonus episode. It's going to come out on Halloween, so look out for that.
Yes, Halloween Day, look out for that. We will be dropping that episode. And on top of that, we got to talk about next month's theme.
Yes, because Monday, that's Halloween, but Thursday, that's November, where we're going to be talking about new movies to us. Movies we have not seen before that we want to see what all the hubbub is about. And it's my pick as the first week of November, and we're going to be watching Cool Hand Luke, starring Paul Newman.
I'm excited. I love Paul Newman.
I really like him too, but I've never seen this movie.
I've only seen bits and pieces, and probably not enough to know the full scope of the movie.
Me either.
But before we go, we kind of have to do a roundup of our movies for this month.
Oh, that is correct. Our favorite movie and our least favorite movie of the month. So, what is your number one movie of this month?
This is hard because I've seen all these movies. I love all these movies.
Do you want me to just tell you?
You could tell me.
It's The Bride of Frankenstein. Like, you're going to pick anything else.
Damn, you're right.
Let's be honest.
Because, I was really stuck with Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein because it has 3 of my favorite monsters, but then we have The Bride and we have Frankenstein.
Yeah, and I would even argue it's like, my toss-up is like The Bride and The Invisible Man. And like, I love The Invisible Man. Objectively, I would say it's like my favorite. I think it's the most well-made one. But if I had to pick like this month, which one is the actual best movie, it's probably The Bride of Frankenstein. Like,
woohoo!
Invisible Man's my personal favorite. I love it. Love that movie top to bottom. All the performances are amazing. But if I had to pick like the most auteurist vision, the best like expression of the cinema, then yeah, it's Bride of Frankenstein.
It's kino.
It is kino.
And also it has one of your favorite quotes.
A toast to a new world of gods and monsters. See, I thought about it for a second.
I was so shocked. Like, how did he forget? For weeks, he's been saying that quote over and over.
I have not. I think I said it during the episode, and I haven't said it since.
You said it prior to that.
Yeah, leading up to it, but whatever. But those are that's the best movie.
Yeah.
Least good movie?
Oh, there's none.
Everything's good this month.
Yes. Everything is perfection.
So, with that, where can they come back to listen to us?
Well, if you want to listen to us on a different platform than you currently are, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor FM, and YouTube.
Yep, you can go to our YouTube channel, The Film Vault. That is The Film Vault on YouTube. You can find us, the Film Club Podcast. You can find our bonus episodes. You can like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. But if you wanted to follow our socials, you can go to
the Film Club Podcast on Instagram, where we post daily stories, trivia, upcoming episodes, and just random adventures we go on.
And with that,
we'll see you next week at the Film Club.
Have a good week, everybody.